Erebus by Dylan Newkirk. Doubt defined Olivia's mind as she traveled down the bleak desert highway, questioning her choice to come along on this dubious little adventure. Self-indulgently, she mused, unrequited attraction is its own special hell. Linger there, alone, and you'll go insane, and sometimes loneliness lasts forever. Pretty words and flowery phrases helped justify her decision by invoking a darker alternative. Olivia hated the idea of exploring an abandoned perlite mine. It sounded dangerous and stupid for no reward. Still, she didn't want him to think she wasn't fun, wasn't interested in what he cared about, and just so long as they were together, it could be a good time. Lucas had begged her to join him, and this trip would decide, once and for all, whether there was anything real between them. Then, one way or another, they could move forward. They'd be together, alone, and share a unique experience that might bind them closer. She wanted that very badly. An ocean of bleak sand and kingdoms of wasted life passed by, a migraine of sun-drenched yellow dunes melting into crumbling blood-red mesas. New Mexico as it really was. Olivia hated this lifeless desert country. This land was nothing. It was nowhere. She wanted to leave, of course, but that was easier said than done in the land of entrapment. Lucas stopped the car and took a call from his office. For a while afterwards he sat, surveying the desolate landscape in perfect silence. Normally, he never wanted to talk about his job, but now he erupted at a furious pace, and, once started, couldn't seem to stop. Olivia listened. She didn't feel what he was feeling, but she tried to sympathize. She did care about his feelings. It wasn't all physical. She didn't want it to be. So, it was all for the best, right? I know it's hard, but you couldn't have done anything else. Lucas stared through the dusty windshield. Nothing I could have done. It was the only way to save her. Nothing else would have saved her. Still, these things make me... He was choking back something profound, something that made her very, very uncomfortable. Olivia saw moisture gather just beneath his rhythmically flaring nostrils and dreaded anything else that might come. She felt her hope for fun and happiness shrivel up and die. This wasn't what she wanted from him at all. Why did he have to do this now? He'd never gotten heavy like this before, and this was a bad moment to shatter what attraction she still felt for him. Repulsed, she pondered, if this is the way he's going to be, why bother going the rest of the way? Maybe I should just turn around and not waste any more time. I could get home early enough in the evening, go to the corner bar, and find someone else. Those thoughts swiftly evaporated. Lucas dammed up the emotional flood that threatened both of them with misery and wasted time. Things returned to the stable comfort she craved, and on they went, deeper into the high desert backcountry. Olivia liked that he was a doctor. True, people didn't always respect doctors the way they used to. The old worship was gone, but there was still a lot of love there. It still meant something, made someone a big deal. Dr. Lucas Otis, D.O., OB-GYN, subspecialty, family planning. That sounded good to her, made her swell with a certain pride. Mount Taylor stands as a signpost for all New Mexico west of Albuquerque. There it is, guiding you, warning you, haunting you as you drive west to Arizona. A long dormant volcano, it serves as a constant reminder of the dangers of the past and how they linger eternally into the present. Through the little town of Grants, and then the littler town of Milan, they took the back roads to the north side of the mountain. There lay the mine, one of 100 abandoned bonanzas left open and uncared for by their owners once the money dried up. Thankfully, Olivia thought, this isn't a uranium mine. They were out here too, pockmarking the desolate landscape like cancerous cankers on human flesh. He'd told her every tedious detail about the mines, and she'd feigned interest out of love, it could be called. Olivia wouldn't go anywhere near one of those horrible places. no matter how much she loved him. No, that'd be the point at which the attraction linking them broke, and she went off to seek out a new man and a new passion. Danger was one thing. The danger of going down deep into a rickety and disintegrating mine shaft. She'd do that for him. But the invisible menace of radiation, the doom of cancer, not in a million years. They parked the car in the dirt shoulder of the deserted road and set off toward the mine entrance. Getting close, they encountered an old wooden sign decorated with skull and crossbone symbols, a warning declaring peril to anyone daring to go through that dark door to the underworld. Beside the sign, a small graveyard had been neglected and left to disintegrate beneath the unyielding elements. Miners, killed in service to the shaft. The battered strips of wood pounded into crude crucifixes were too far gone for any names or dates to be made out. This reminder of inevitable death and decay made Olivia's mind's eye flash uneasily back to a cemetery in Albuquerque, one she was afraid to visit. The headstone on that grave had already started to weather and fade from its original pristine appearance during her last visit to the gravesite. Olivia thought grimly about the future, about the grave she'd watched be filled, and how it couldn't escape the same imposed anonymity as these lonely little crosses. Such a waste of life, she thought, with a mind full of conscious disgust and a heart filled with unwitting hate. Onwards they went, as the sun fell below the mountain's looming peak and the land assumed an atmosphere of dusk. The Badlands leaked out of the mountain, black currents of volcanic rock that marked dead outpourings of Earth's molten blood. Beyond one black stone river lay the mine entrance, and they had to trek some distance over rough terrain to get there. Olivia disliked the idea of leaving the car back on the road, but there was nowhere else to park, and, she reminded herself, it wasn't her car anyway. Worst case scenario, if Lucas's car was stolen, they'd be stranded for a while, call for a tow truck, and await rescue. Oh, she lamented, while stumbling over a broken ocean of sandstone. The things I do for love. Over the black, bitter malpais, through a thicket of goat-headed pricker burrs, always enduring a continuum of thirst and hot wind. Even in the mountain's shadow, the dying day's heat bled off the sand. Then, finally, they found what he'd been so eager to see. To Olivia's eyes, it was an impossible disappointment. A little hole in the ground. That's all it appeared to her. Nothing that warranted the effort they'd expended getting here. Lucas examined it pensively, and after a moment, he smiled. She couldn't help but feel some warmth and reward from that show of emotion. Good, Olivia thought. That's what I like. That's the way it should be. None of that pathetic misery. Only bright and handsome joy. That makes this worthwhile. He gestured towards the hole. There we are. Make sure you've got everything we need, and stay close to me once we're inside, okay? Olivia nodded, returning the gleaming grin that still lingered on his lips. Happily, she thought. That shouldn't be a problem, as long as he keeps smiling. After they'd been in the mine for about an hour, things weren't going well. Lucas had been so insistent that she double and then triple check the contents of her backpack that when he told Olivia to do it for the third time, sensing an opening, she'd coyly invited him to come closer and check for himself. One thing had led to another, and now only disappointment remained. Do you think that God understands all of why we do what we do? All the nuance, I mean? Olivia didn't want to look at him, so she didn't. I don't believe in God, obviously. Don't tell me you're going that way, just because something bad happened. I thought you were smarter than that. She hadn't meant to be so harsh, but she didn't want to take it back either. She was tired of him. To call their long-awaited encounter, back there in the first chamber of the mine, unsatisfying would be an understatement. She didn't care much anymore where this went. All that effort, All that anticipation, and it had been so much nothingness. Olivia loathed herself for submitting to this humiliation. What was she doing here? She studied this second chamber where they rested, disgusted by its dankness only slightly more than by her own stupidity for being there in the first place. Now they still had to go through the motions, still had to explore this revolting place and indulge his curiosity, even though she had no intention of taking their relationship any further than it had gone today. Her inner voice selfishly wondered, why do I have to keep going? She didn't have a good answer to that question. She could insist that they get up, turn around, and exit the mine right then. They weren't that far in, and she knew he would do it. He'd be angry, he'd curse her out, but she knew he'd comply. Lucas was a good man, when all was said and done. He'd see her out of there safely, whatever his own desires. Maybe that's why I don't want to actually make him do it, she thought mournfully. Maybe that's why I'm still pretending. She didn't want him to be sad, despite the disappointment he'd caused her. Before they left, Lucas called out to her. Make sure to use your flashlight on this next section. It's going to be rough. Olivia didn't register the importance of his words. She was distracted by something scribbled on the sandstone wall and half worn away by time and wind. One last skull and crossbones, warning them to go back. Next to the familiar sign for peril, something was written in crude black letters, half of them distorted and worn away so as to be illegible. Written in what looked like charcoal, the remaining fragments read, H-E-L, space, 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 H-E, space, O-N, space, space, after, space, 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 space. Olivia didn't know what it meant, didn't know what the worn-away parts of the words were. It made her shudder, though, and any thought of that flashlight was a million miles away at that fateful moment. They moved on to the next chamber, then the next, all of them boring as sin. A few relics of mining days long gone, a helmet, some crates, an old mining cart with broken wheels that, for reasons beyond Olivia's comprehension, was a source of abject fascination for her tenuous lover. The connecting tunnel they entered next was to be their undoing. Elevated from a level above and sinking down to a level below, this passage was far more decayed than anything they'd encountered before. Olivia balked at the shaky wooden bridge that crossed the cavern's span, afraid to trust those rotten logs. Lucas shook his head, smiling ruefully at her hesitation. Under different circumstances, that might have inspired a thrill of intrigue. Now, though, Olivia was consumed by apprehension and a dread of something mysterious, something deeper than her fear of trusting her life to this ancient bridge. They encountered no trouble until they reached the bridge's halfway point. A single misstep, excessive pressure on a critically weak piece of rotten timber, and Olivia was falling down into the pitch-black emptiness beneath that troglodytic bridge. Shuddering, both from the pain of the fall and the terrifying darkness she found herself in, Olivia cried out in desperate need. Lucas's voice answered her inarticulate wail in fierce words of angry comfort, and presently she heard his boots stamping against the splintered wood ramparts of the broken bridge. She heard his grunts of discomfort and outrage, and then there he was, there, with her, again. Lucas carefully pulled her up. Olivia felt him, but couldn't clearly see him in the inconsistent light provided by his shaking flashlight. She reached out for him and clung to his chest despite the pain it caused her. Lucas hugged her back, and his voice came through, clear as a life-saving bell. I'm so sorry. Olivia didn't want to hear his apologies, but neither did she resent them. All she wanted in that moment was to never be left alone again, not even for an instant. They sat in the rubble and held each other. Olivia ripped off her gloves so she could feel his face, his hands. Even the rough material of his clothing offered her some comfort in this lonely place. The flashlight dangling from Lucas's backpack shined randomly off to one side, casting strange shadows. It felt like eternity, but no more than 5 minutes passed. Separating from her with some difficulty, he checked her for injuries. Thank God, nothing too bad. I'm sorry, I know it must hurt. I mean, you'll be okay. Nothing's broken, and you don't have a concussion. Olivia said nothing, just nodded in vague relief. Lucas continued. This was all my fault. Let's get you out of here, and there's a hospital in Grants. Not a good one, but it'll be fine just to make sure you're... He trailed off, and Olivia saw his eyes drifting away from her into the distance. She followed his gaze and saw what had distracted him. The flashlight's steady halogen beam projected a cone of white light that revealed the space around them. Sandstone, lifeless and dull, and on the cavern floor, a carpet of fine gray powder that moved like silt on the deepest ocean bottom. The sand, or the powder, whatever it was, the way it moved wasn't natural. It fluxed and swirled, like it was underwater, and abyssal currents compelled its constant movement. That strange movement bothered Olivia. Disquietingly, she noted that there was no breeze down here, no movement of air at all, that could explain the way that silty substance moved. Lucas got up, his eyes narrowing. Olivia's heart fell. All his concern for her was gone. Something else had stolen his attention, something he cared for more than her. Lucas motioned for her to rise and come with him. Look over here. You're okay to walk, right? Look at the stuff on the ground. Look at the way it moves. He started walking away without waiting for her reply. Wounded, but still too scared from her ordeal to express the betrayal she felt, Olivia resentfully staggered after him, following in the strange wake his passage left in the silt. It parted before them, like the forced union of immiscible substances, and left bare rock in their path, like the parting of the Red Sea. Lucas remarked, in a tone of obvious fascination, "This is bizarre, the way it moves. It must mean there's a passage nearby. Air from the surface must be coming in here and disturbing the sand. But there's no light. How could that be?" Olivia said nothing, and he thought for a moment. Snapping his fingers and looking angrily back at her, he said peevishly, "Turn on your flashlight. That's why you fell. You didn't listen." Silently, Olivia obeyed. She'd never even taken it out from her overstuffed backpack. She just relied on the illumination from his flashlight. They walked for a few more minutes in perfect silence, and then, suddenly, Olivia realized Lucas was no longer at her side. She felt terror stir within her breast and fought down a choking reflex in response, one seemingly at odds with any conceivable evolutionary advantage. Desperate, she flashed her light off to the right, where he'd been walking. Nothing. She flicked the light back the way she'd come and felt her stomach drop. Not only was there no sign of Lucas, but she couldn't even see the way out. It wasn't that far back. She should be able to see. That thought froze in Olivia's head as she was startled by another realization. She'd expected to still see the wake their passage had left in the silt, see the bare rock path leading back to where they'd started. Not only was that path gone and the rock invisible, but that mysterious gray substance had changed completely. Before, it had been a silty, protean carpet, wafting with their movements, almost a vaporous thing, like mist clinging to the ground. Now, it was as dry as ash, and looked as solid as graveyard dirt. Olivia looked down apprehensively at her feet, nestled in the ashy powder. She dimly entertained the thought that the substances had changed at some point as they'd walked, and she hadn't noticed. But there were no footprints leading back the way she'd come, and there were none leading off in any other direction either. So where could Lucas have gone? Her inner voice tried to rationalize the mystery, tried to calm her. Maybe it did change. Maybe it's just hard and doesn't easily leave footprints. That's possible, isn't it? Olivia took a few experimental steps forward, and was troubled twice over by the result. A loud crunch, like walking on thick, wet snow, sounded in the silent, dark expanse with each step. How could she have been walking on this new stuff without noticing that sound? The second thing that made her tremble was the simple fact that, indeed, her boots left perfectly visible footprints in the snow. In mounting confusion, Olivia looked back at the uniform layer of strange particulate matter covering the cave floor, the way they'd come, and then she heard the rustling up ahead. This faint sound disturbed her raw nerves more than simple logic could justify. Shining her flashlight in the direction of the sound, Olivia saw something indistinct, something awfully familiar, a kneeling human shape. Against her will, driven by inexorable curiosity, Olivia slowly approached this ominous vision. Dread mounted, pulsing fiercer in her veins with every step, and then climaxed as a mighty burst of impossible horror when she came face to face with this solitary thing. It was her mother. Only, it couldn't be. She's been dead for 5 years now, Olivia's mind numbly, pointlessly remarked. After decades of trying with all her might, she'd finally succeeded in smoking herself to death, and then wept when the end came. The old woman just stared at Olivia with numb, dead, unthinking eyes. Finally, something came from behind her lips, but it wasn't speech. Recoiling from the shade, Olivia managed to steal a glance behind her into the endless darkness. Her eyes flashed on her own footprints in the ash, the dust, the dry snow. It was so thick, in all directions, as far as her flashlight could reveal in the black depths. There wasn't a single trace of any other disturbance on that top layer of soot. Nothing to suggest that her mother had moved from this place in a long time. How long had she been here, all alone? In a hellish instant that Olivia could never forget, no matter how hard she tried, sudden and terrible life came back to the blank lizard eyes of her dead mother. She shuddered back, not the master of her body, or, for that hideous moment, even her soul. A hiss, a sound without human feeling, escaped her mother's colorless lips. Olivia fell back, desperate not to stumble. She suddenly felt terrified by the ash and wanted more than anything to keep from falling to the cave floor. A single word, that's all it took to drive her back in a horrible panic. Her mother repeated the word, and at first Olivia couldn't make it out. Then it clicked, and she struggled to keep from crying as she fled. She retreated in terror, 20 paces, walking backwards, unable to take her eyes off her mother's shade. Olivia stopped, trying madly to recover an iota of control. She heard something, and whipped her head around to track the distant sound. A very, very distant cry. So high, so shrill. Something wrong there. Wrong. Wronger than everything else so grotesquely wrong about this place. Crunching in the dust, Olivia heard staggering footsteps coming her way. Paralyzed by fear, she could tell that those steps were someone walking backwards, not seeing where they tread, just retreating in a blind panic from something awful. Olivia didn't want to look away from the oncoming sound, could barely move a muscle, but was compelled to glance back at her mother in the near distance at the limit of her flashlight's range. The shade remained in that exact spot where Olivia had found her, but now she was sitting bolt upright and staring across the gulf at her daughter. She didn't move, made no effort to escape the place of eternal solitude. Maybe she couldn't. The footsteps manifested, and it was Lucas. He emerged from the darkness, and Olivia saw that the dust, the snow, the ash, it was all over his arms, his chest, his knees, like he'd been crouching down in the dust, looking at something. But what could it have been? Lucas's eyes were unfathomable, his pupils constricted to pinpricks, the irises a solid blue shield. Daring to look back just before they fled into the infinite blackness, all was undisturbed ash. Her mother was gone. An escape of mad fear, groping their way out of the darkness and clambering in blind, unthinking panic up through the hole in the bridge's broken timbers. It had been sunset when they'd gotten back to the car, and now, 15 minutes later, the land was consumed by the pitch blackness only true wilderness could offer. All the hideous colors of the day had gone. Emotionally numb, Olivia looked down at her aching hands. Greasy wood was embedded in her trembling members as a million splinters. She dimly remembered that she hadn't bothered putting her gloves back on after that pit. His voice came through her dazed mind like something very far away. She struggled to understand Lucas's words through the haze of unresolved shock. "Did you see it?" Blankly, she answered with pure reflex. "I didn't want to see it." "But did you see it? On the way out?" Olivia said nothing. He maintained their silence for a morbid moment. Did it look human? Such a strange question, even in the grip of her consuming confusion. "Human? What do you mean?" Another moment, and Lucas spoke again. Obviously, he was struggling for words to express himself. "The one you saw, did you know who it was?" She nodded, and he kept his eyes locked on the black road ahead. His knuckles whitened as his grip tightened around the steering wheel. His breathing was ragged and stifled. Olivia remembered what her mother's shade had whispered and dared to ask. "Did it say anything to you?" Lucas licked his lips and shook his head. No, it couldn't. It couldn't have said anything. "I heard crying." He nodded and said nothing. She wanted to tell him, had to tell him. "I saw my mom. She tried to say something right before you found me." Lucas glanced over, and Olivia suddenly felt ashamed. She looked away, but was compelled to unburden herself just the same. She continued. "She said, tried to say, alone." As they sped along the dark highway, silence took them. Both felt a fearful resemblance to the quiet of the cave, and neither dared break the stillness.